This is Jim Fetzer, your host on Authentic News, right here on RBN Live, this first day of April 2025. Maybe it's appropriate, it's April Fool's Day, as Trump threatens Iran with bombing if nuclear deal is not reached. When you think about the history here, there's something absurd about it. President Trump on Sunday threatened to bomb Iran if a deal isn't reached on the country's civilian nuclear program. Notice, civilian. That's not military. That's a peaceful use of atomic energy. If they don't make a deal, there will be bombing. It will be bombing the likes of which they have never seen before, Trump told NBC News in a phone interview. This is truly grotesque. Remember now, Tulsi Gabbard, as director of national intelligence, reported that the intelligence community agreed Iran does not have nuclear weapons. Well, there's nothing wrong with having peaceful use of nuclear energy. It's done all over the world. Look at Ukraine. They got a dozen, maybe even 16 nuclear power plants. That's why it's scary that we got this lieutenant general suggesting they had to blow them up if Russia's going to win. This is truly bizarre. And if you want proof that Trump is a stooge of Israel, that he's Bibi Netanyahu's sock puppet, this is it. The president has made similar threats toward Iran, but Sundays mark the most explicit yet, and comes as the U.S. is sending more bombers to the region and pounding Yemen with daily airstrikes. Trump also said the U.S. could hit Iran with secondary tariffs if a deal isn't reached. That's quite a choice between some increased tariffs and being bombed, the likes of which you've never seen. Meanwhile, rehearsing Iran's scenario, U.S. uses B-2s to attack Houthis. The U.S. Air Force has launched new strikes in northern Yemen, attacking a military airfield and a building where, according to preliminary data, a senior Ansar Allah, that's another name for the Houthis, movement meeting was taking place. Notably, the B-2A strategic bombers based at Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean took part in the raids for the first time. The Pentagon had previously transferred these aircraft from Whitman Air Force Base in Missouri. The use of B-2As in this conflict is unlikely to significantly increase the damage inflicted on the Houthis. However, their use is seen as a show of force to Iran, as well as a possible test of scenarios for striking the Islamic Republic in conditions close to real ones. Yeah, so they're kind of rehearsing. Well, get this. It's on X. Iran loads missiles on launchers. Trump threatens bombing if Khamenei backs out of Iran deal. I mean, what's going on here?
I get a lot of people go, you know what, I don't even listen to the news anymore. I'm so fed up with this stuff. I just want to ignore it. That's exactly what they want you to do. You have to pay attention. You got to read the tea leaves because, you know, in this case, knowledge is power. And learning is superpower, so to speak. So you got to know what your adversary is up to and prepare yourself. And the other thing is, you know,
Dale, hold on. 60 seconds. We're joining 450 radio stations. I'm sorry. That breaks in the start of the hour. Come back. I'm glad we're ending on this because this is absolutely key. You know what the enemy's going to do by their lying. This is the critical intel I want you to spend a few more minutes on this, and we'll let you go. We really appreciate your time. I'll hit all the news. Back in 60 seconds, folks. Stay with us.
Well, I think Alex does actually a lot of good. And what else can Iran do? Now get this. Here's the irony. Here's the irony. Iran will have no choice. Iran will have no choice but to acquire nuclear weapons if it's attacked, says an advisor to the Supreme Ayatollah, the Supreme Leader. I mean, think about it. Presumably, we don't want Iran to get nukes. Well, Iran doesn't have nukes. Our own intel community agrees Iran doesn't have nukes. Iran isn't seeking nukes. So Trump says we're going to bomb you if you don't agree to get rid of your peaceful nuclear energy program. How is that legitimate? And remember, Trump is the very guy who got rid of the previous nuclear agreement where the Iranians were complying and they had inspectors in the whole bit to ensure they weren't developing bombs. This is a twisted mind of Bibi Netanyahu being implemented as though he were a ventriloquist through the dummy Donald Trump. I am just shocked, embarrassed, ashamed. This is so irresponsible, putting a world war on the back of a phony claim that Iran's trying to develop nukes when it has no such interest. And if you do attack him, as you're claiming you're going to do, if they don't give up the nuke program they don't have, they're going to have to get them. I mean, how bad is this? Insulting. Meanwhile, very, very interesting Sonar 21. Trump's negotiators failed to understand Russia and Europe crashes and burns. When Donald Trump made his promise to bring peace to Ukraine in 24 hours, he obviously was thinking in terms of how time is counted on the planet Venus. On Venus, one Earth day is equivalent to 243 days. That's his only hope of delivering on that promise. Trump may be a master at negotiating a deal to build a hotel. He has no clue how to bring an end to the war in Ukraine. The process is stalled, not because of Russian intransigence, but because Europe and Ukraine's Zelensky are throwing up roadblocks. The Black Sea deal, for example, hinges on Europe lifting economic sanctions on grain and fertilizer exports from Russia and reconnecting one of Russia's key banks as SWIFT. Europe said, hell no. Trump also expressed anger over President Putin, saying he won't talk to Zelensky, even though Trump himself called Zelensky a dictator. Donald insists Putin must talk to the Green Goblin. President Trump apparently does not realize that Ukrainian President Zelensky enacted a decree on October 4, 2022, based on a decision by the National Security and Defense Council of September 30, 2022, prohibiting negotiations with Russian President Putin. Even if Putin decided to engage Zelensky tomorrow, it's illegal under Ukrainian law to do so. For starters, Trump needs to order Zelensky to withdraw that order. Does Trump even have a clue? I'm just dumbfounded. Meanwhile, Hegseth is talking about holding another war with China. Hegseth ordered the Pentagon to focus on preparing for war with China over Taiwan. I mean, this sounds an awful lot like a declaration of war with the world's most populous nation that has all kinds of weapons we're not aware of. We're being run by morons. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth distributed a memo in mid-March ordering the Pentagon to put its focus on preparing for a war with China, a nuclear armed power, by assuming risk in Europe and other parts of the world, the Washington Post reported Saturday. The Post didn't publish the full memo, known as the Interim National Defense Strategic Guidance, but said it outlines in broad and sometimes partisan detail the execution of President Trump's vision to prepare for and win a potential war against Beijing and defend the United States from threats in the near abroad, including Greenland and the Panama Canal. This is the guy who's going to bring us peace, right? He was going to end the stupid wars, and now he's got all kinds of ambitions. He's talking about a war with China. He's upset with Russia. He wants to bomb Iran. He wants to see Greenland and the Panama Canal to boot. This is lunacy. We all know the saying, the lunatics are running the asylum. Well, here in the United States, it's true. Meanwhile, Hal Turner, limousine similar to Putin motorcade explodes and burns. This appears to be a Zelensky attempt to assassinate Vladimir Putin. British media reporting it's not yet known if an explosive or incendiary device was utilized. It's also not yet known if the device was placed on the limousine or went off as the motorcade was passing it hidden in a sewer. There's no visible blast damage to windows or buildings surrounding the scene, so there are questions about the circumstances of this event. Meanwhile, Putin promised not to kill Zelensky, according to a former Israeli PM who talked about it. But how can that promise remain if Zelensky is trying to kill Putin? Former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett said he received a promise from Russian President Putin that he'll not kill his Ukrainian counterpart. Bennett emerged as an unlikely intermediary in the early days of Russia's 11-month war with Ukraine, becoming one of the few leaders to meet Putin during the war on a trip to Moscow last March. But I dare say again, Putin may have promised not to kill Zelensky, but you certainly had to assume Zelensky wasn't going to try to kill Putin. Man. Meanwhile, the electronic intifada. Trump takes support for Israel to new extremes. We have noticed. When the first phase of the ceasefire in Gaza ended, Israel stepped up its use of starvation and psychological warfare. These measures created immense suffering for more than 2 million Palestinians living under conditions that have long been catastrophic. The resumption of Israel's full-scale bombardment has now made it even harder to survive. The real objective of Israel's war in Gaza is not to rescue captives, as is so often claimed. Israel's captives could have been returned had Israel adhered to the ceasefire agreement from January, which it repeatedly violated. There's ample reason to believe Israel never intended to end the war. Instead, Israel is using the captives as a pretext to advance its true goals, the destruction of Gaza and of anyone who opposes Israel's occupation. Yes. If you haven't figured that out yet, you must be living in a cave. Meanwhile, a missing Gaza rescue team turns out to have been executed by Israeli forces. Are you surprised? Truth Seeker reports. A week after a group of aid workers disappeared in Gaza's southern town of Rafah, the Palestinian Red Cross says they're believed to have been executed by Israeli forces. A group of 15 paramedics and rescue workers from Gaza's civil defense vanished on March 22nd in the Tal Sultan neighborhood of Rafah, following an incident in which Israeli forces fired on ambulances and fire trucks. They'd arrived in response to an Israeli bombing in Rafah. So far, no traces have been found. Well, actually, they have been found, and they were executed by the IDF, as is reported here. And there's been no international outrage. These are aid workers. These are supposed to be protected. They're in a special category. And Israel just kills them, shoots them in the head. I mean, this is grotesque. Meanwhile, Austria must expel Israeli envoy over a call to execute Gaza children. I mean, there's nothing the Israelis won't do. If no action is taken, and this is coming from Middle East Eye, any nation that continues to operate within Vienna's UN framework becomes accomplice to this evil. Democracy and genocide cannot coexist. One must give way to the other. Once upon a time, when a diplomat openly called for genocide, demanded the death penalty for children, even acknowledged that such demands violated UN conventions, he would have been expelled without hesitation. But in Austria, a country that hosts UN agencies, institutions supposedly dedicated to the principles of human rights and international law, the abnormal has become the norm. In a secretly filmed video leaked this week, Israel's ambassador to Austria, David Roth, calmly advocates for genocide, for the deaths of children, and for the utter destruction of Gaza. His words are chilling, but not unexpected. He's not a rogue voice. He speaks with the full weight of a government that's been allowed to perpetrate violence with impunity. Roth speaks in Gaza as though it were no more than a distant nuisance and inconvenience to be swept aside, but his words, spoken without shame or fear, are damning. How much do we need to know to figure out what's going on here? Meanwhile, schools are no place for the ADL. This is from Mondoweiss, examining the ADL's No Place for Hate program. The Anti-Defamation League's flagship No Place for Hate program brings the organization's Israeli advocacy into K through 12 schools across the country under the guise of anti-bias education. Administrators and educators should be on alert. Indeed, they should. This is absurd. Meanwhile, Trump signals U.S. has no choice but to acquire Greenland. President Trump signaled Friday that the United States has no choice but to acquire Greenland from Denmark for national security reasons. The president doubled down on his push for the island nation while speaking to reporters in the Oval Office just a day after Russian President Putin said Trump was dead serious about taking over the island. We need Greenland, very importantly for international security. We have to have Greenland, he said. It's not a question of, do you think we can do without it? We can't. If you look at Greenland right now, if you look at the waterways, you have Chinese and Russian ships all over the place, and we're not going to be able to do that. We're not relying on Denmark or anybody else to take care of the situation. And we're not talking about peace for the United States, he continued. We're talking about world peace. We're talking about international security. And right now, you look at it, you have warships all over the place going through right along Greenland. We're not going to let that happen. We cannot let that happen, or if it's going to happen, we have to be protective of our country. This is unbelievable bullshit. Unbelievable bullshit. Meanwhile, a Danish foreign minister says, this is not how you talk to allies. Denmark's foreign minister has chided United States President Trump administration for its tone in criticizing Denmark over its role in Greenland, saying his country is already investing more into Arctic security and remains open to further cooperation with the U.S. Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen made the sharp remarks in a video posted to social media Saturday after U.S. Vice President Vance's visit to the strategic island. Many accusations and many allegations have been made, and of course we are open to criticism, he said, speaking in English. But let me be completely honest. We do not appreciate the tone in which it's being delivered. This is not how you speak to your allies. Sorry about that. Meanwhile, we have Trump reporting that Marie Le Pen ruling is a very big deal. I certainly agree with him about this. Le Pen has been found guilty of embezzlement in what appears to be a completely fabricated case, and she's been sentenced to prison, but she's been given 2 years of home confinement and 2 years of suspension. French National Rally Party leader Marie Le Pen being barred from seeking office for 5 years after a conviction for embezzlement. Isn't this convenient for the parties who would run against her, since she is by far the most popular political figure in France? And it sounds like something that could happen in the United States. According to President Trump, it's a very big deal. A lot of people thought she wasn't going to be convicted of anything. He told reporters Monday, I don't know if it means conviction, but she was banned from running for 5 years, and she was the leading candidate. That sounds like this country. Sounds very much like this country. A Paris court found Le Pen guilty Monday of embezzling funds from the European Union Parliament. This is just so ridiculous. She's not permitted to participate in elections over the next 5 years, which could crucially sideline her from running in France's presidential election in 2027, as though that were the whole point. I mean, this is just insulting. Meanwhile, British delusion. There's a whole lot going on in England, and none of it is good. Here we have British delusion, deep and profound. Normally, I'd ignore the ignorance and stupidity expressed in the following video, but given Mr. Robert Fox's credentials, he was the London Standard's defense editor. His presentation is worth listening to appreciate just how diverse from reality the establishment experts are in the United Kingdom. I will only subject you to 3 quotes from this buffoon. Let's start with his insistence Russia is the aggressor and that Europe is innocent in all of this. I think there is in the coalition of the willing, and let's not talk about armed forces at the moment, they see something different about Ukraine now from America, and it's simply this. They have to draw the line at Ukraine because they see a way like Russia, whose economy as well as government is dedicated to being a military regime at the moment. And the threat that poses is not only to Eastern Europe, but to Western as well. This is just absurd. Meanwhile, Britain is lost. White men to face tougher sentences. Unbelievable. I mean, the whole idea of equal justice under laws, you're not supposed to consider any factor, race, religion, sex, whatever, when you're being treated under the law. Starting Tuesday, white men in the United Kingdom will face tougher sentencing than ethnic, cultural, and faith minorities, as well as young people under 25, women, and pregnant women. They used to call this racism. So now if you're a white man, you can expect more time in prison than a minority person. This is the same country that arrests you if you smart-ass comments on social media. What has happened to the UK? Meanwhile, from 97% to 37%, think tank director Pete Whittle on the dramatic decline of white Londoners and Britain's radical ethno-cultural revolution. Dramatic drop. In an interview with Harrison Pitt, a prominent writer and thinker in Britain's national conservative sphere, Pete Whittle, founder of the New Culture Forum, explores the increasingly dire state of affairs in modern Britain. They explore the nation's mounting challenges, many arising from an entrenched anti-democratic elite that is deeply antagonistic toward and even outright distasteful of the historical people of Britain, dismissing their call to end decades of mass migration, especially the influx of military-aged men from other alien cultures. The situation is getting very bad there because of migration. Meanwhile, Quakers condemn a raid at the Westminster Meeting House. Quakers in Britain strongly condemn the violation of their place of worship, which they say is a direct result of stricter protest laws, removing virtually all routes to challenge the status quo. Just before 7:15 p.m., more than 20 uniformed police, some equipped with tasers, forced their way into Westminster Meeting House. They broke open the front door without warning or ringing a bell first, searching the whole building and arresting 6 women attending the meeting in a hired room. The crime? Sentencing in Courts Act 2022, Public Order Act 2023, have criminalized many forms of protest and allow people to hold action deemed too disruptive. These are Quakers, for crying out loud. This is an anti-war group, and the idea that they're being punished like this is absurd.
Broadcasting Network. Real news, real talk, real people. Because you can handle the truth.
Did you know the IRS...
Nothing you can do that can't be done. Nothing you can sing that can't be sung. Nothing you can say, but you can learn how to play the game. It's easy.
Here's a doozy. South African Constitutional Court. Kill the Boer, kill the farmer is not hate speech. Trump admin drops military aid to South Africa. The South African Constitutional Court has rejected a lawsuit by civil rights organization AfriForum going against the song Kill the Boer as sung by the Marxist economic freedom fighters, saying it has no reasonable prospects of success. The Trump admin has cut all aid and military assistance to South Africa over its blatantly racist and discriminatory laws. According to the Sunday Times, the Trump admin has cut assistance and cooperation, expelling its military attaché. The paper cited a memo dated March 13th from the State Department that the U.S. for training will be sent back to South Africa, that any South African military personnel in the U.S. for training will be sent back to South Africa as soon as possible, suspending all aid to South Africa. Wow. Meanwhile, Trump aims to outlaw most government unions on the ground that they are threats to national security. White House says little used provision allows the president to exempt most federal jobs from union protection. I don't really like this either. President Trump, Thursday, signed an executive order purporting to outlaw collective bargaining across 2/3 of the federal government, signed a little used provision of federal labor law that invokes national security. A fact sheet says the order applies a rarely used provision of the 1978 Civil Service Reform Act that allows the president to exclude agencies and their offices from collective bargaining rules that cannot be applied to that agency or subdivision in a manner consistent with national security requirements. Trump first considered using this authority in early 2020, granting then Defense Secretary Mark Esper the ability to exclude the Pentagon from federal labor law. Following bipartisan pushback in Congress, Esper elected not to exercise the authority. I suppose there could be room for debate about it, but I'm troubled. Meanwhile, Trump DOJ launches an investigation into DEI admissions at Stanford and University of California campuses. This is troubling. DEI, I think, it was a bad idea. The pendulum appears to be swinging back toward traditional merit-based standards that once defined American education, and it's about time. Attorney General Pam Bondi has directed compliance review investigation into the admission policies at Stanford and multiple University of California campuses, including Berkeley, UCLA, from which my parents graduated, and UC Irvine. The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division will spearhead these investigations, examining how diversity, equity, and inclusion policies may have influenced admission decisions. I actually think getting rid of DEI is very, very appropriate. Meanwhile, the University of Michigan has gutted its DEI program, Zero Hedge. The University of Michigan said it'll eliminate all diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts following the Trump admin warning that colleges with discriminatory policies could lose federal funding. The changes, announced Thursday, including shutting down 2 diversity offices and ending the DEI 2.0 strategic plan. This follows earlier steps to phase out DEI-related requirements, such as removing mandatory DEI statements in admission, hiring, promotion, awards, and performance review. The university said individuals who previously worked on DEI initiatives across various schools, colleges, and departments will now refocus their full effort on their core responsibilities. I got to say, I do agree with that. Meanwhile, Scott Jennings, the CNN panel, Democrats have morphed into an angry mob cheering violence and chaos, Zero Hedge again. Following sleazy Democrat Congressman Jasmine Crockett's disheartening remarks about the Texas governor's wheelchair-bound condition, GOP analyst Scott Jennings offered some words of advice to the far-left-leaning panel during Tuesday's edition of CNN Newsnight. I don't know how Democrats appointed Jasmine Crockett as the unqualified leader of your party, but thank God. And I think what she should do is go on TV twice as much, maybe 3 times as much, because every time she appears, makes these mistakes, says something radical, only further divides her party from the other 80% of Americans who can't stand this. But the problem is, there's an audience for this. I heard Jimmy Kimmel's audience cheering on Tulsa vandalism. I heard the Daily Show's audience on attacks on Elon Musk. I hear the human rights audience cheering on an attack on a man in a wheelchair. And I realize this is what the left has become. An angry mob of people who are cheering on attacks on a guy in a wheelchair and vandalism against people who bought a Tesla. It's pathetic. He's got it right. Meanwhile, follow the money. Musk, ex-CEO, Yasserio, stunned. Musk intrigued after reading bombshell report on far-left NGOs targeting Tesla. In other words, there's an organized effort here. There has been a race against time to uncover the complex web of dark money-funded far-left NGOs fueling the Tesla takedown color revolution, operating that far-left corporate media outlets have cheer-led. Here we have libs of TikTok. The Daily Show is justifying and practically celebrating attacks on Teslas and Tesla locations, suggesting Elon deserves it. The audience erupts with cheers of footage of Teslas on fire. Listen to this.
Say what you want about Elon, but he certainly has his fans.
I love Tesla.
I'm not saying Donald Trump is racist, but that man does love a hard R. But if you step outside of the White House, you'll find a backlash brewing against the founder of Tesla.
Lawmakers across the country facing anger and outrage from their constituents at town hall meetings, and the primary source of the blowback is Elon Musk.
What are you doing to stop the activities of unelected and unconfirmed Elon Musk?
Elon Musk does have a security clearance.
We need to find out what Elon Musk is doing and how we can stop him.
Elon Musk Elon Musk has conflicts of interest out the wazoo.
I support Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency.
Oh, tough crowd. You know you're in trouble when you even pissed off the kid with the cherry 8-ball sweater.
I mean, that's really pretty bad, encouraging that kind of attack. Meanwhile, this is peculiar. Trump's spiritual advisors, there's some kind of guardian angels for $1,000 kind of scam going on here. Let me see if I can get a report about it.
Grown, right? But owing back taxes is worse than discovering sand in your boxer shorts after the beach. Hey, man, for the time being, we still got most of the 87,000 new IRS agents that were hired. Relief firm, they've saved over like $1 billion in back taxes for clients, and they can help y'all. It doesn't matter if you got $10,000 or $10 million, but extremely necessary.
Well, the story isn't showing up in a timely fashion. Meanwhile, get this. Gavin Newsom gives tampons to third-grade boys, so they're going to have a lot of use for those. Occasionally, Americans need tampons, somewhat, sometimes even at a young age. Thanks to a demand meeting plan, California school district now offer them with unprecedented altruism via dispensers. Even third graders can nip in the bud any issues of female flow. It includes female boys, as the cost-free containers bedeck boys' bathrooms. This is the school year's outset. District bore the burden of a washroom overhaul. Subsequently, students would discover the tampon fairy had landed in their latrines, and make no mistake, that progressive pixie is positively unprejudiced. The move toward unbiased bedecking began in 2021 when California inserted itself into pupils' periods. The Menstrual Equality for All Act required schools with any combination of classes from grade 6 to 12 to freely furnish pillowy provisions in powder rooms, and not just the ones labeled girls. I mean, thank God this insanity is coming to an end. Meanwhile, White House sets the internet ablaze with a post about an ICE arrest that has gone viral. The Trump admin has been doing a bang-up job on the border, and they're doing all to deport illegal criminal aliens. About 10 days ago, the White House posted about the arrest of a Virginia Becerra Gonzalez earlier in the month. According to ICE, she had previously been deported in 2020 after serving time for attempted possession with intent to distribute fentanyl. They allege she then subsequently re-entered the country. So there's a story about it, and it's been on X. She's quite a charmer. Amazing stuff. Okay. Homeland exposes DHS failure to locate 10,000 illegal minors disappeared from the system. This is tragic. When President Trump first brought the issue of America's decades-old neglect immigration system to light in 2015, the left laughed him off. No one's laughing now after demonstrated proof of years of flagrant corruption and abuse. The shocking and willful neglect of the border has resulted in untold suffering for millions of Americans and millions of un-Americans. Countless illegals have been mistreated and exploited by both smugglers and those of the communist globalist crime syndicate in Washington, and apparently left as zero concern for the well-being of those who are bringing in illegally. Even when they take custody of illegals, the care for these captives is seemingly of no concern. The latest government report confirms what many have long suspected. Federal agencies have completely lost control of the situation at our southern border. 10,000 illegal miners have disappeared from the system. Meanwhile, reimagine New Jersey. Get this, zero hedge. Newark Mayor Ross Barca shown in video supporting Farrakhan's racist, violent views. Now, this is more controversial in my opinion. I've been rather impressed with Louis Farrakhan in the past as a pretty smart guy who has seen through a lot of the smoke and mirrors that we have across our country to make it look like we're a far more democratic and equitable society than is the case. Across the country, Democrat leaders are resorting to what I've called rape rhetoric as supporters are turning to actual violence, including arson and other crime directed against Tesla. In Hawaii, Governor Josh Green even reacted to Novak Djokovic playing tennis with HHS Secretary RFK Jr. by hoping he would be hit in the head. However, Newark Mayor Ross Barca, currently one of the top Democrats for New Jersey governor, appears to have gotten an early lead in the race to the bottom. In a video that's now attracted interest in his run for governor, he gives a full-throated endorsement to the violent, racist rhetoric of Nation of Islam leader and raging anti-Semite Louis Farrakhan. I'm not quite sure about all this. I think the Farrakhan case is very complicated and worth analyzing. Meanwhile, NBC reportedly has a film proving Oswald couldn't have been the shooter. So where the hell is it? The Republican congresswoman leading a task force on the declassification of JFK and other assassination files made a sensational claim Friday, saying NBC possesses evidence proving Lee Oswald could not have shot Kennedy, and she's working to obtain it. Florida Representative Anna Paulina Luna made the jarring allegation in an interview with Jesse Waters for Fox. She is chairman of the task force on the declassification of federal secrets, a subcommittee of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. She told Waters the task force will be holding an April 1st hearing, that's today, on the tens of thousands of docs that have been declassified pursuant to Trump's order. Then she dropped her bombshell. I was made aware this evening NBC actually have a video that's never been shown. We're going to have a letter requesting it. It allegedly shows Oswald near the vehicle when the assassination took place, which means that he couldn't have been the shooter. Laura also said Oliver Stone, who directed the 1991 thriller JFK, says he's seen a secondary copy of the film and that NBC has been sitting on it. Director Stone actually told us he was shown the tape. That was a secondary copy. He said it could blow open the entire JFK investigation. What I will also tell you, though, Jesse, is that he said the NBC had been very, very much guarding the tape. So I believe the tape belongs to the American people. We're going to be sending a letter asking for that tape. We already knew, of course, Oswald cannot have done it. Meanwhile,
if you're an avid reader,
so much younger than today. I never needed anybody's help in any way. But now these days are gone and I'm not so self-assured. Now I find I've changed my mind and open up the doors.
Three final stories, all of which have to do with sexual blackmail. Apparently, those of us who wondered about why RFK Jr. was suddenly so positive about Israel and the slaughter in Palestine, he may be being blackmailed. Apparently, he engaged in some sexting, which, of course, is, sexual banter over a phone, often with videos or photographs, and he's been compromised thereby. There'll be more about it, but here's one report.
So the Bobby Kennedy blackmail story is currently breaking in many directions all across the internet, and American politics is not going to be the same after this weekend. That's not hyperbole. This is not just a hook, and I don't really know where to start. But this is the kind of story that I've gotten enough calls from enough people tonight, and there's enough going on that I feel like we need to make a video right now to keep some people safe and to get as much as we all know out on the internet right now so that everyone can be safe. And the best place for everyone to start is at Candace's video that she put up today, that she very aptly titled, "One Nation Under Blackmail." Go watch it. She does a way better job of explaining a bunch of what's going on than I could. But as soon as I was like 10 minutes into it, and then I started getting phone calls from sources telling me more information that is corroborating and taking it even further than what is exposed in that video. And
Let me say there are two other stories here. Virginia Guthrie hit by a bus. Was she murdered? Was given then 4 days to survive because her kidneys had shut down. Those who do not know, she was one who spoke out about the Epstein. She was one of the young girls who was sexually trafficked. She was the one who exposed Prince Andrew. So here's the heading. Epstein and Prince Andrew victim Virginia Guthrie was just hit by a bus and had 4 days left to live. I'm very troubled by this. She seemed to me a completely sincere young woman who was willing to speak out. Meanwhile, Daily Wire reports Epstein's most outspoken accuser critically injured in bus collision. 4 days to live. Virginia Guthrie, the most outspoken victim of deceased pedophile billionaire Jeffrey Epstein, I dispute that he's deceased, revealed on Monday she has 4 days to live after being struck by a school bus. I don't think it was she who revealed it. She's unconscious. The crash took place in Western Australia, where Guthrie has been living with her husband. Details about the exact location and circumstance of the accident remain unclear. Virginia has been in a serious accident and is receiving medical care at a hospital. She greatly appreciates the support and well wishes people are sending in, said a spokesperson to the New York Post. Guthrie, now 41, has accused some of the most powerful men in the world of sexual abuse of minors, including Prince Andrew and Victoria's Secret founder Les Wexner.